Zoom. Go
Okay,
ahead.
so just so everyone knows, we are recording. If anyone has any issues, say so now and I can stop recording. But what we're going to do with this recording is then post it to the website. So this way you guys can watch it again to, revisit also for people who maybe weren't able to make it to this particular event. So unless anyone has any objections, we can continue on.
Sounds good.
All right, let's proceed.
Yeah, so I guess the things that are, the most common questions among students, first of all, have to do with, quality of life issues, questions like the stipend support, the requirements for getting the degree, how long does it usually take, things like that. So um, I can tell you that I can actually share with you on my screen. I'll do that now. The IPN website, which you all can locate, can find yourselves, but it's here. Can everyone see that? So if you go to mcgill.ca/IPN, you'll be able to get all kinds of information about our program. And in particular, this is the stipend funding information for the upcoming year. And so the main thing here that I want to show you, this is basically what matters in terms of quality and cost of life, is that we've kind of divided your stipend into two parts. One is the living allowance, which is what we believe is kind of the bare essentials for a student to be able to live on. And you might get a range of opinions about whether it's sufficient or not, but it's pretty good. And if you share, willing to share an apartment, things like that, students have been able to get by. However, we acknowledge that it basically is going to cost more and more over time, that being a PhD student is a longer term commitment than being a master's student. And so you'll notice the living allowance is slightly different for the PhD students and for the master's students. And actually, it's due to go up again next year. So the idea would be that this is calculated based on a consumer price index, cost of living, adjusted value. And we want the PhD students to get about $3,000 more than the master's students. So if you decide to transfer from master's to PhD, you'll see a big jump in your pay, which is kind of a nice acknowledgement of your having accomplished that milestone. So, so next year it'll be, not next year, but the year after, it'll be a $3,000 difference. Also note that these are linked to the consumer price index in Montreal. So this year it went up by 5.2%. It'll go up by different amounts each year, basically linked to the cost of living. And then the second component is the tuition and fees. And you'll see that for international students, for example, tuition and fees are considerably higher than for Quebec students, both for masters and for PhD. And so what we ask is that your supervisor basically cover all of that component for you. So some of it will be paid by IPN, but basically you should consider that, what you take home at the end of the day is not going to be affected by how much you're paying in tuition. It'll be this living allowance, okay? That, bear in mind, is a minimum amount. Many supervisors choose to pay more than that. And importantly, if you get a fellowship, then we have a top-up policy, okay? And so your supervisor would be expected to pay at least 10% of any fellowship that you receive on top of those minimum amounts, up to, if you get an even larger award, then the amount you take home from that award increases proportionately. So the goal here is to both encourage you to apply for fellowships, which is very important. It helps support the lab. It helps, build up your CV, but also, it's a nice way for you to have some control over your take-home money. And those are the main things. So, this is basically what you can expect as a master's or PhD student. That's in terms of funding, that's paid directly into your account. So you'll register your bank account when you arrive, and that gets paid into your account. The amount for tuition and fees, I think, goes into a fee account and gets taken out of that. And sometimes the timing can be a little bit tricky. So we ask students to try and defer their fees to the end of the term so that you can kind of accumulate any costs until the end. All right, so that's pay. I'll stop sharing now. The other thing has to do with coursework. So as a student in IPN, you're expected to take, as a master's student, 3 courses, and as a PhD student, 4 courses, plus an additional course, which is a 0 credit research ethics course. So the students who are coming in have a wide range of backgrounds in neuroscience. So we have two core courses called Principles of Neuroscience 1 and Principles of Neuroscience 2. The first is a cellular and molecular neuroscience course, and the second is more of a systems neuroscience course. And the goal is to get everybody up to speed in those two areas and just the basics. If you've taken a similar course as an undergrad, you can actually get exempted from those courses. We don't want you to, waste time by retaking those sort of basic level courses, but we want everyone to have, a core neuroscience training. Then after that, you're expected as a master's student to take, a total of 3 courses, including those core courses. For PhD, a total of 4, and the 705, which is the research ethics course. And those elective courses cover a huge range of things from statistics to computational neuroscience, programming, computer science. You know, I can't even. There's so many different options. Neurodegenerative disease, etc. So anything that you might be interested in, there's likely a course that you can take on it. So those are the main requirements, in addition to, of course, your basic research. So your research is the main reason why you're coming to do graduate studies. We expect a master's thesis at the end of your master's degree, a PhD thesis at the end of your PhD. And for PhD students, they're expected to pass a candidacy exam to show that they have mastered competency in their field. A very common approach is for students to enter as a master's student. And after about 1.5 years, they'll decide that to switch to the PhD. You're allowed to do that. It's called fast tracking. And fast tracking to the PhD basically gets you off the hook for having to write a master's thesis. You jump right into the PhD after doing your candidacy exam. So those are, yeah.
Oh, sorry. Once you finish that thought, we do have a question in the chat. Are there any IPN fellowships for international master students?
Okay, great question. So fellowships are an important part of your training. For Canadian students, of course, there are the federal fellowships from CIHR and NSERC primarily. The provincial awards in Quebec, the FRSQ and FRQNT, are actually available to all students, international and Quebec and Canadian. So that's an opportunity for you. International students have specific awards that are available just for them, depending on the country they come from. So, students from Mexico have CONACYT as an opportunity. Students from China can apply for the CSC fellowships. And then there are lots and lots of internal awards. The internal awards are a little bit smaller. They range from about $10,000 a year to about $15,000 a year, sometimes a little bit more. And those fellowships are open to everyone to apply for. There's some from the Faculty of Medicine, some that IPN gives itself. And there are also some, if you're, for example, at the Montreal Neurological Institute, there are awards just for students at the Neuro. Douglas has some fellowships as well. So lots and lots of opportunities for fellowships. You'll probably get sick of applying for fellowships, but it's a very good exercise in kind of making your research plan and working with your supervisor on that. So I think those are the main things that will sort of occupy your time as a graduate student. And then there's a lot of aspects of quality of life and, learning about science and hanging out with other scientists and having social events and stuff like that, which I think probably the GSAN representatives here are most are in the best position to describe. I just want to, before is it okay if let's see, I'll answer a few of the questions that I see up here, and then I'll hand off the podium to the GSAN people at first. Is that okay? Does that sound reasonable?
Well, I think maybe after you answer some
go.
questions, we can maybe see if people have any questions about admissions or something.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I think admissions is one of the main goals here. So we're lucky to have Mirko Sablich here, who is our admissions coordinator, admissions officer.
Also,
So
if people want to ask a question using the mic, feel free to raise your hand, because sometimes we can't always keep up with what's going on in the chat.
All right, I'm going to just go down the list on the chat really quickly. So when is the best time to apply for fellowships? If you look on the IPN website, you'll actually see dates for all the different fellowships. Each fellowship has its own independent deadline. So you're going to have to do a little bit of research on all of those. And most of the fellowships are basically available for you to apply for after you arrive. So, the exception being for Canadian students, the CGS-M it's possible to apply for that before you come, but I think in general, students typically apply in their first year. I guess the other ones that are the international ones, the CONACYT and the CSC, you can apply before you arrive as well. Okay, well, I may have missed this. I wasn't able to come up until now. Can you go into an MSc program without a concentrated science background? Okay, so if you have a humanities degree, you're probably going to have to take both of the core courses. So you're expected to take 3 courses. Those can be the 2 core courses plus the elective. For other master's students who have a background of some sort in science, you might choose to take just 1 core course and 2 electives. But if you don't have a strong background in the sciences, I would recommend the 2 core courses plus an elective. Okay, Elizabeth, I already had a potential advisor, and then she said she's not able to support me, so I'm going to have to interview. I'll have to interview with another one. Can I still apply? Your application remains, so maybe Mirko can answer this best, but your application remains active. It's not linked to a supervisor until such time as you actually fill out a letter of understanding. And even after that, you can still change your supervisor. So I'll defer to Mirko on this, but I think you're still good in the system. Mirko, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, hello everyone.
Mirko.
Yeah, I think her question was that you haven't found a supervisor as of now, and but that you can find, you still have time. Well, look, there's 2 deadlines, right? The international deadline and the Canadian deadline. So if you're international, then the deadline is March 1st. Now, do we have room for being flexible? My answer to that is always like, just let us know when you find a supervisor and we'll see what we can do at that time. If you contact me in August 2024, I'll probably say no. If you contact me a few days after the deadline or even a couple of weeks, I'll probably say yes, we'll push it, So, but I don't want to make this announcement that yes, it's flexible all the time, but I have to do it a case by case.
Yeah, I would add that in the case where you had a supervisor and they backed out last minute, I think we can probably make some accommodations. Like we'll listen to your individual story and
yeah, it's case by case. I think it's we're reasonable. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I mean the reason for these deadlines has to do with immigration and the application for a study permit, and we just know from past experience that we need the decision to be made about this time. Okay, Ines, you have your hand up. I guess that jumps to the top of the queue.
Yes, hi, sorry.
Hi.
I have a similar situation to this previous person where I was queued up and I was in the final round of interviews for a lab and they decided to pick someone who already had a PhD degree. But I was wondering, I am a French citizen and I know that like fees are considered, like I would get a Canadian tuition fee. I don't know if being a French citizen pushes me to the Canadian deadlines or to the international student deadlines.
Yeah, unfortunately, as a French citizen, you're still an international student.
Right.
And so you would adhere to the Canadian deadlines. However, you should absolutely make sure to mention this fact to any lab that you consider applying to, because supervisors, of course, will immediately understand that means a smaller financial commitment for them. And so they'll probably, see that as more favorable.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right, there's a couple questions in the chat. Somebody wanted to know what the timeline would be from application to acceptance or admission result.
The rate limiting step is actually finding a supervisor. So once you've found a supervisor, Mirko is able to basically feed you into the system quite rapidly, right, Mirko? Is that basically?
Yeah, exactly. Like it really, there's no timeline. As soon as you confirm a supervisor, I will say if everything is okay with your file, within a week you will get a McGill offer. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very efficient once everything's sort of set up. Once you've identified a supervisor, things go smoothly. And always, if things seem to be getting hung up, you can always ask us, but it's very rare.
It's also it's rolling, right? There's some people that are already admitted. Of course, we have like many people already in the program. They've been admitted in January, some of them in December. So it happens as soon as they have a supervisor, things start rolling.
Great.
Yeah, and we're basically doing almost entirely internationals at this point. So we're prioritizing international students.
Yes, yes.
All right.
Mika, you had your hand up very early. What?
Well, she did have a question in the chat that you just answered. So
Oh, okay.
maybe we can wait and maybe answer. Let's answer Alan's question in the chat and then go to the raised hand. So Alan's asking, how long does it typically take to receive the first stipend funding after, I guess, the first stipend payment? You
Yeah.
mean after enrollment?
Yeah, so like I said, it's not always super fast in the beginning, and a lot of it has to do with, you're setting up your bank account and all that information at McGill. The students can probably tell you better than I. It's supposed to be that first, like within the first couple of weeks, but I'm not sure if you've all seen that. Did the two of you see that? Yeah. So two things to keep in mind. One is there's payments from your supervisor, which are your monthly, your stipend that comes every 2 weeks. But then there's also a big chunk of money if you're an international student to help cover international fees. And that should come sometime in the first month. So again, it may not come before the term starts, which means you'll have to have paid your tuition and fees before the money arrives, which is why, again, we really recommend that you defer that first payment so that the money's in your hands before you have to pay it. Good. Any other questions? Adriana, do you want to pick one?
Let's go with, okay, Mika and then Benji.
Sorry for another question. I was just wondering, does this program qualify for student loans under the Quebec government?
Marco might be better to answer that. Typically, we discourage that. Your stipend should cover your costs. And so if you have to take out loans, then it's kind of, like your stipend isn't doing the trick. I can understand that people have different, individual situations. You might have medical.
Well, I mean, I think I can answer this question. I mean, it depends on the province that you're taking out your loans for. If it's from Quebec, I mean, they will calculate the loan amount on the basis of what the stipend is vis-a-vis how much tuition is. So ultimately, it's the loan granting office that decides how much. But there's no rule that says you can't. Like you can legally do that. But ultimately they'll decide like how much you'll get.
And bear in mind that your stipend will always be higher than your tuition.
Great, thank you
Seen
so
that,
much.
by the way. It's not common.
Yeah. Benji, you are next.
Hi, so I just had a quick question about finding supervisors. I got an email the other day saying that a particular supervisor only took domestic students. Is there a way before reaching out to supervisors, figuring out whether or not they actually take international students in their labs?
It's really typically set by budget. So I don't think there's any supervisor who's just like, I don't like international students, I don't want to take them. It's rather that international students end up costing them nearly twice as much from their grants. And so their typical approach will be to favor taking Canadian students, Quebec students in particular, so that they can pay the least amount. If the supervisor doesn't have a large number of grants, it may just be, it may not be feasible to pay $45,000 for an international student.
I think that what they're asking is like, is there a way to know in advance? And the answer is not without reaching out to the supervisor, because every supervisor's situation is different, and we have so many faculty members. You do have to reach out to find out, but ultimately
it will change from year to year.
It changes.
I would like to add something there. Definitely, I would say if you are applying and reaching out to supervisors, I don't think you should really think about that. Like a supervisor might change their minds just by the mere fact that you're qualified to be in their lab. So maybe they're taking, oh, I don't have a budget, but then if you're really qualified, they'll say, you know what, I'll find some budget for this. So
yeah, that's a good point.
Or they'll find a co-supervisor to split the.
Exactly, they will do anything to get you in.
And if a student is, for example, if a student is French, then they're going to cost less. So that's something to keep in mind. Also, if a student comes in with a lot of publications, a couple of papers, that means your chances of getting a fellowship are really high. And so again, the supervisor may see that as offsetting the amount that they would be owing in international fees. So
I think next was
Awesome.
Tef. Tef, go ahead, ask your question.
Yeah, so my question is already on the chat, but I'm kind of having trouble finding a supervisor because they kind of all seem to already be full. And I've emailed a lot of profs, so you think it's just, do you have any advice for me to kind of reach out, or do you think it's like lack of qualifications? Because I do have lab experience in 2 labs already, so I was just asking, what could I do to kind of make my application stronger towards those supervisors?
yeah, that's a good question. So in many cases, like I said, the grant funding situation is what determines whether someone is ready to take someone in their lab. And so you probably you need sort of the stars to align properly, which means that if somebody just got a big grant, they're going to be looking for students. They might be more open to taking someone in the lab. And that means that even if you talk to 2 or 3 supervisors and they say, I'm not interested, my lab is full, you should keep trying other supervisors. If you don't hear back from a supervisor, I can tell you this is kind of unfortunate, but supervisors are just really busy and often, like forget to respond to emails. So don't be put off by not getting a response. Keep trying. The squeaky wheel gets the oil. But definitely keep looking for other supervisors. The fact that 2 or 3 might have said no has no bearing on what others will say.
Thank you for your advice, and I've also sent like follow-up emails to supervisors,
Very good.
and I sent a lot of emails, but I'm gonna keep looking. Thank you.
Good luck.
Great. So I think then it's Hannah and then Aiden.
Hi, so my question is also about the supervisor. So I just approached a supervisor and she said that the interview will be after the deadline for international students. So I'm like not sure if I should like ask her to rearrange another time, or is it okay for me to like having a interview after deadline?
I guess
Yeah, I'm a bit worried about that.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. What I would say is that you should, that we have a lot of supervisors, like 270 supervisors, and many of them will take one student every 3 or 4 years. They may not be really up to speed on the process, how it's evolved or changed over the years. The deadline for international students was recently changed by the university, so things like that. So I think it's very good for you. I know this sounds annoying that you have to inform the supervisor of the process, but in many cases, they're just not up to date the way that the IPN office would be or the way you as an applicant would be. So it's good to inform them that, on the IPN website, it says that the deadline for finding a lab is March 1st, and that if they could make an accommodation, given that you're an international student, you'd appreciate it.
Okay, and also about the deadline, because like previously I have emailed to the office and I just like check on the application form. It actually say it's March 15th, so I'm not sure about that. And then reply me about it's actually March 15th, but now I notice it's actually March 1st, and which is on Friday. So I was like not sure like how this work.
Yeah. So
When is your interview?
She said it will be probably on the week of the March 25th. So it's actually a bit late, I think.
Yeah, that's a little bit late.
Yeah.
So I will say, why don't you like send me an email at admissions, ipn.admissions@mcgill.ca with the name of your this supervisor, and then maybe I can reach out to the supervisor and remind him of the deadline, and if the supervisor can do something about it. Okay, so send me an email.
Okay, so should I just tell her first or send you an email first about
Send me an
this?
email.
Okay.
I'll
Thank you.
answer right away.
Okay.
it'll
Okay.
help to have, Mirko
Okay.
kind of talk to the supervisor. That'll kind of soften them up to prepare for the change.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you so much.
no problem.
Okay, let's, we have a question from Aiden and then from Priscilla. So Aiden, what is your question?
Hi, so I submitted my application about 2 months ago with my supervisor listed on it, but I still haven't heard anything back from you guys. Was I supposed to email you the name of my supervisor on top of the application?
Yeah, I think I got your email or the email of
Yeah, I
somebody,
just
but
sent it this morning. I don't know if
yeah,
that.
you're in my priority list, so
Okay, perfect.
you
Well,
will
then
be
that
here
clears it
from
up.
me shortly.
Sweet, thank you very much.
No problem.
Yeah, I guess what we're waiting for is action from your supervisor in this case.
Mhm.
All right, Priscilla, what is your question? Priscilla?
Yeah.
Yes, well, I already have a supervisor. Well, I think so because he told me that he will just accept me if I get a scholarship from Mexico. I mean, I'm from Mexico, but I will just know if I get the scholarship until July or maybe August. So I don't know what I have to do if I have to search for another supervisor.
I can answer that because I'm actually aware of your case. This is with Dr. Cuello, right? I guess yes. Yeah.
Again, I didn't hear.
Yeah, it's with Dr. Cuello.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, he sent me an email, and basically, I mean, yes, he is waiting for you to receive that. So I'm going to address that. We have to see what we can do. I mean, a supervisor can always give you a conditional LOU, but in your case, you're saying if you want to find another supervisor, I think yes, you should. I mean, I know it's March 1st, the deadline, but I mean, you should try. I mean, maybe a supervisor will be ready to take you right away. So you'll have to hear, you will hear from me because you're already on my list too. So we'll get back to you about what can be done with that.
Okay, thank you so much.
No problem.
I believe we have a question from Maisha. Maisha, go right ahead.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Could you tell me a little bit about the International Differential Fee Awards? Like, would I be automatically considered for it, or do I need to apply it separately? Like, what's the procedure? I just want to.
Sure. The way it works, if you're applying for so if you have a master's degree already, then it's very straightforward. Is that the case for you?
Yeah, I have a master's degree.
Perfect. So what would
and I'm
happen
applying for a PhD.
is once your supervisor decides that they're interested in taking you, they would fill out a letter of understanding. So this is the case for all students, that if you find a supervisor that is willing to take you, they have to fill out this form called a letter of understanding, it's kind of like a contract that explains what they're going to pay you, their expectations for the lab, things like that. And it's good to read that quite closely because sometimes the supervisors have specific expectations in there. You read it, and once a copy of that is sent to you and to us, we will ask the supervisor, or the supervisor will nominate you for the International Differential Fee Award. And then it immediately just goes to the process of evaluation. Within a few days, you'll hear back from the committee. I should say that the majority of students who apply for who are nominated for an International Differential Fee Award end up receiving it. And there may be some conditions where a student, is coming in with a very low GPA or may have some red flags in their letter of reference, something like that, where it might not be approved. But in general, it's almost automatic once you found a supervisor.
So I get it right from the beginning of my PhD program.
Yes, you'll never be asked to pay those fees yourself. The fact is, if you don't get an international fee award, then your supervisor will be paying the differential.
Right. Of course. Thank you so much.
But you'll get it. I mean, like I can't guarantee, of course, but the vast majority of students end up getting it.
There's a question in the chat from Nina. I just want to confirm that the deadline to find a supervisor is the deadline to send our supervisor's name to the email, I believe, to admissions. not
I answered.
necessarily.
I answered
We already
already.
answered that. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
I don't see, do people have questions? This is an open Q&A session, so feel free to raise your hand, put a question in the chat. I'm trying to also answer some of the questions in the chat myself.
Yeah, I mean, along towards that last question, I would emphasize that the key thing is to have your supervisor nominate you. That's kind of the step that the office is paying attention to. So you can tell us that you found a supervisor, but the most important thing is for your supervisor to tell us that they've agreed to accept you. And once that happens, the process moves forward almost automatically. Any other questions in the chat? Rotation program results. So students who applied for the rotation program are basically, we had interviews for the short list, and I can tell you that the majority of students who are offered positions have accepted them. And so it's very likely that either you were told that you were not accepted, in which case you should definitely start looking for a supervisor through conventional means. If you were waitlisted, I still recommend that you go and find a supervisor through the traditional means, because the probability of coming off the wait list, it's not zero, but it's not very high. The wait list is, it's several people deep, and I think it's likely that we may at most be able to take one person from the wait list this year. So please, if you're on the wait list, don't assume that that's an entry to the program. Go ahead and continue applying as if you were not going to do the rotation.
All right, there's a question in the chat. Do we get a notification when the supervisor nominates us? Would that be the notification that our file is made available to them?
I can answer that. Yes, once you find a supervisor, and I know that the supervisor is interested on your application and to make you an offer, then yes, I will let you know that I'm already talking to that supervisor, and the supervisor will have your file ready to submit an LOU, what we call the letter of understanding. So yes, definitely you get a notification, an email.
Great, thanks, Mirko. Are there any other questions from the audience or Yuzhen, you have a question. Go right ahead.
Yeah, hi everyone. I have a question. Like after we send the confirmation email for the letter of understanding, how long does it usually take for the committee and the admission office to approve the application?
I didn't entirely hear. There was a little noise while you were speaking.
Yeah, there's a bit of static.
Yeah.
Could you
sorry.
repeat the question? Sorry.
Can you hear it now?
Yes.
Yeah, better.
So I was wondering, like after we send the confirmation email for the letter of understanding, so how long does it usually take for the committee and the admission office to process and to approve the application?
Take just a few days. From once you confirm the letter of understanding, then it's a few days, unless that we have to there's a committee issue that we have to, if it's a PhD one, for example, it might take another 2 days or something like that, or if we are still reviewing the LOU, making sure that everything's okay. But normal, I would say 2 to 3 days. So of course, now we're in a bottleneck. There's a lot of applications coming in, so it might be a little longer. So your patient is requested.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
A couple of questions in the chat. One from Elhansa. Regarding the Anti-Black Racism Initiative Recruitment Award, in the website it says the department must submit a nomination directly to graduate funding. The department refers to the IPN or the lab?
It refers to the IPN. If you are accepted into a lab, actually, I mean, even if you're just applying, I think, Mirko, do you know, is it meant before acceptance? Certainly after acceptance, it applies.
I would say it's after acceptance, yeah.
After, that's how I've seen it in the past. So once you have a lab, you can write directly to me, to your supervisor, and just say that you'd like to be nominated for the Anti-Black Racism Initiative Recruitment Award, and I will write a letter nominating you. And again, in most cases, those go through.
Excellent. So we have another question in the chat from Mika. If you get accepted for co-supervisorship between supervisors at 2 schools, do you get to choose your host institution / where you get your degree from?
You want to answer that? I mean, it's usually that's complicated, but at least one of the supervisors has to be associated with McGill and the IPN. And if you are accepted at the IPN, then you're getting your degree from McGill. There's no escape on that. So, but the co-supervisor in another school, I am not sure, Ed, what's the situation there? So
I think
no.
co-supervisor has to at least be affiliated with McGill in some way.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
you can have a co-supervisor at another university, but you're still considered a McGill student. McGill does not allow you to be simultaneously enrolled at 2 universities. So you can't get a degree from both, for example. There are some very, rare exceptions to that, but as a general rule, if you're a McGill student, McGill expects you to only be enrolled at McGill.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any more questions from the chat or from within the audience? Sorry. Okay. From Elizabeth, once I confirmed a supervisor, how long does it take to receive an acceptance offer? How long, Mirko?
Well, I said once you have a confirmed supervisor and then the process begins, it could take up to a week from that, like the supervisor has to submit an LOU, you have to confirm the LOU, I have to review your file once more, and if everything is okay, it's 2 days after that. So if you add it all up, it's usually a week. But I don't know what forthcoming scholarships calling. I'm not sure what do you mean by that, forthcoming?
Yeah, there's one thing that if you're applying for a CSC, for a China Scholarship Council Award, you need that acceptance really, really early. And so let us know if you're applying for the CSC, because we have to go through a different admissions process.
Well, I think this one is from it's not CSC. I think it's Mexico, correct? I think it's So you have to let us know, because and then you have to send us whatever documentation the scholarship office in your country has given you, so we can work on it and talk to the supervisor and make sure that everything goes smoothly.
I see 2 questions from Aiden that I think are important. One is, are stipends taxed as income? And the answer is no, they're not taxable in Canada. So you get to keep it all, which is good. And then the other one is, I'm having trouble finding resources on benefits, such as health and dental. So all IPN students are expected to get PGSS, the Postgraduate Student Society, is that what it stands for? Yeah. Insurance. So if you do a Google search for PGSS McGill, you'll find information about the dental and medical insurance. It's possible to opt out of some of those. I think you can opt out of dental, for example, but not medical. But it's not that expensive, and it's probably worth doing. When you get to my age, you'll regret not having gotten dental insurance. I think the medical is, I don't know what you guys think. It's mandatory. Have you found that it's for international students, of course, it's useful because you don't have other options.
There's also, when people are admitted, I send out a new student guide, which includes information about insurance. But yeah, in general, I believe that if you are international, health insurance is mandatory. Well, health insurance is mandatory for everybody, either if you're covered under RAMQ, which is for Quebecers, or what you bring with what you get from the university.
Right, and I think you'll be charged for, I think even if you're Canadian, you'll be charged for PGSS insurance. So
yeah,
I'm gonna type the link in.
Yeah, that's probably, we'll put the link in there.
I've received an offer from McGill. Do I need to confirm my transcripts and send it through WS and send it to McGill? Mirko?
Yeah, sorry. So where is that question?
It's I think one of the newest questions. So in the Q&A.
Really? I don't see it though. I'm having time finding it, such as.
Let's read it. I've received an offer from McGill. Do I need to confirm my transcripts through WES and then send it to McGill?
No, WES is not it's not considered official for McGill. You need to get your institution to send your official transcripts directly to McGill without you intervening, or WS. It's basically university or institution to McGill directly. In the new student guide, we have an email address there where your institution can send the transcripts directly to McGill to that email address.
But students shouldn't panic, right? The transcript has to be submitted at some point before starting, but I don't.
Yeah, no, actually even more, but I mean, there's no rule for that. Usually for your first term, even if your official transcripts are not haven't arrived to McGill, you still will be able to register for your first term. It's your second term that is more important. So by the end of your first term, if your official transcripts have not arrived, then you will be blocked from registering for your second term. So you have until, let's say, November, if you were accepted for fall.
Any other questions? I do see like a recurring question about emailing the IPN that you found a supervisor. So don't make that mistake of thinking that that email is the whole, like that's not enough. What really is required is for your supervisor to fill out a letter of understanding, and you'll receive a copy of it once it's filled out, so you'll know it's been done.
Great.
Sorry.
There's a question in the chat from Marco. If accepted to the IPN for graduate studies, can I still be enrolled in a short graduate program in another university, for instance, to do Spanish studies?
That's an interesting question. Well, we assume you're like full-time at the IPN. I mean, we don't need to know that you're registered somewhere else taking Spanish classes, and it's like, you know, it's like I'm not sure how you could do a second graduate degree in another university while in Montreal. So, but if you're taking a course, I think you're free to do that. So
yeah, I think there may be a difference between a degree granting program and a you know.
Yeah, I mean, you have to bear in mind, once you're at the IPN, you're full-time. You're working in a lab and you have to pass courses. So at nights, I guess you could do the Spanish or any other language or course. I mean, you're free. I mean, I know students take online courses all the time, but it's not towards a degree, or least of all for a graduate degree, you know. So I hope that answers the question.
The other bit of good news, I think, and maybe Isabella, you can answer this, isn't GSAN offering Spanish courses, like casual Spanish courses, or did that end?
No, but PGSS is. So
PGSS.
PGSS, which is our parent organization, does French, Spanish, I think also dance last semester, this semester, which is clearly another form of communication. But yeah,
Probably
no,
the best way to learn
GSAN,
Spanish, right?
I mean, that's what they say.
So those are free, yeah?
Yeah. Wait, no, PGSS has some are paid. I think the language circles or like conversation rooms are free. Yeah, and Elizabeth is nodding, so that sounds like a yes.
Yeah, but the
So
courses are very
half.
expensive. They're very, very cheap for the whole semester.
Yeah.
There is a raised hand from Faustina. Faustina, what is your question?
So if you're coming from a humanities degree, am I required to do like volunteering in a lab or several labs prior to applying, or does that help with the application?
If you're coming in as a master's student?
For a master's degree, yes.
Yeah, I don't think that there's a requirement. You can, and Mirko might know better than I, but I've seen students enter the program directly from undergrad with from the Faculty of Arts, right, Mirko? Or is there any?
Yeah, no, that's it's. I mean, I won't say it's common, but I will say there's several cases per term that we get people with a humanities degree. They're accepted in a lab. The important thing for you to know is that you have to take those PN principles of neuroscience courses that are, as Ed said before, they're heavy, right? They're like, and then so you will just have to pass those courses. So, you know, it won't hurt you to, if you have time to volunteer. I mean, it won't hurt you. That's a great idea for sure. Like, you know, so.
Yeah,
so
the other thing I'd recommend really strongly is if you don't have a strong biology background, to do a little bit of self-study over the summer before you come. So, you know, find a biology textbook and try and work through it. Because otherwise you might find yourself quite lost in some of those classes. They do assume a
Yeah.
base of biology background.
Right. I do I've spent a lot of time reading neuroscientific journals, so
Excellent. So
So I
yeah,
have-
you'll
That's
have no
very
problem.
good.
okay, thanks.
Someone asked, can you transfer from master to PhD? Absolutely.
I just sent them the
You
link to
answered
the
in
fast
the-
tracking on
Yeah.
the but yeah, we do fast tracking. I sent the link directly, but I'll also put it in the chat for anybody who's interested in knowing how to fast track. Oh wait, sorry, I sent that again to the person directly. My mistake. I have to change that.
It's
There we
actually kind of the best route to get to the PhD because it gives you a chance to see if this is the thing that you really want to do, to see if the lab you're in is really, you know, the lab that you want to be in. It's possible to, you know, finish your master's and then do a PhD in a different lab if that's what works best for you. And if you come in directly to the PhD, which is not very common, you're really kind of committing, the flexibility is much less. And I think there's no downside to coming in as a master's student. It, you know, it may not even add very much time to your degree. So I think that would be my recommendation, to keep your options open. The only downside, I suppose, is it's harder to find a supervisor as an international student because it is more expensive. But if you're a good candidate, hopefully they'll consider you.
It's also worth remembering there's no downside to having a master's degree either.
Yeah. Yes, and I mean, you will have to speak with your supervisor too about it from the beginning. I think that's a key element because you will continue in the same lab, right? You will be moved from MSc to a PhD, and your supervisor needs to be in full agreement before you even think about this.
Yeah, and it's not uncommon for students to just write up the master's and then switch to a different lab. The other thing is that, you know, you'll kind of be learning as you go whether this is the thing you want to do. And so, you know, it's not like Adriana says, it's not a bad thing to leave with a master's degree if you've in fact decided that, you know, you'd rather be working in industry, you'd rather be doing something that doesn't, you know, it's not so academic, which is often the case. So, you know, it leaves more options. All right. Oh, more hands. Elisa.
Hi. I'm really sorry if this is just like repeating information that you've already said, but I'm a little bit confused. So I submitted my application through the Slate portal, and I've been in January, and I've been kind of waiting to hear, but I guess I missed the fact that I should have emailed to confirm the supervisor, because I already have that and I indicated that on the Slate application, but I'm not sure if the IPN admissions office like communicates with that application portal, I guess.
No, sometimes not, sometimes yes. It's very difficult for us. That's why in our website we have that message saying, please email us if you have a supervisor. So email me today and let me know the name of your supervisor, and then we'll start the process.
You're
Thank you.
Doing a master's at the University of Victoria, is that right?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
am.
so it should be a very easy path. So definitely
Yeah.
just let us know. Yeah.
Yeah, I just got nervous here because I realized the deadline is March 1st. So is it going to be okay? Like I just emailed you, but
Yes. Look, if I get an email like on March 1st, I will definitely consider it within the deadline, and then we can take a few more days. But anyways, once I see your email, then and this is on March 1st or before, then it's fine. We'll make it happen.
Yeah, and you know, it's a good
Thank
idea
you.
to double check with the supervisor, make sure that they're, you know, they're
Yeah.
still.
But send me the email, please.
I see the name of the supervisor you listed is somebody who's a real straight shooter. So I think just talk to him and he'll do
Yeah,
it.
but send me the email.
There was well, I answered in the chat, but there was a pretty good question about professional development services and career development services. So in the chat, there are two links one for teaching and learning services that I put, and another that Isabella of GSAM put for career planning services for McGill. Also, we do collaborate with the Wellness Hub at McGill to also do some professional development workshops as well. And I manage the IPN communications and newsletter, so I periodically announce workshops as they're happening. So you will always know, as long as you're checking your email, what's going on. But the university has plenty of offerings in this regard.
One thing though is that, so in terms of not so much career planning, but as a student, you shouldn't necessarily expect to be doing TAing or things like that. It's possible to do, but it's actually quite hard to find a position, and it's not expected of you at IPN. So your stipend will not be changed if you do TAing or not. I guess you might have a chance to earn some extra money, but don't expect to be able to find a TA. We don't have an undergrad program at IPN, and so we don't have as many opportunities as most departments would have for, undergrad TAing.
Just want to let everybody know that there's about 7 minutes left until the session is over. So probably have time for about 2 or 3 more questions, depending on the length. So, and of course, you can always email myself, Ed, and Mirko. And when I send the link to this recording, I'll include all the email addresses.
If there aren't questions, I don't see questions coming up. I'd love to give Isabella and Elizabeth a chance to just say something if you want to say something, because
Yeah,
they're a great resource.
Yeah, for like a few minutes.
Sure. Do you want to go first, or should I start?
You can start and I'll add to what you're saying.
Go for it. Okay. So yeah, so we're GSAN, we're the Graduate Student Association for Neuroscience. We're a collection of IPN students, so we've been in your shoes, we applied. We were lucky enough to get in. We organize a lot of events. So we try to target all the different needs that we have as graduate students. So we do social events. Elizabeth organized this really cute wellness cafe last week. We're planning a gala for the end of the year. We also do orientation sessions and barbecues. So we try to build the sense of community. IPN is a massive program, so we have a lot of students in many different institutes in different locations. So we're all over Montreal. And that's why we work so hard to make this community out of everyone everywhere. So also feel free to reach out for us if you have any questions about student life, what it is to be a student, what are the different options that we have as students as well. So yeah, I think that's like the really quick pitch, because I'm seeing questions as well in the chat.
If I can just say really
Well, realistically, we're also not going to be able to answer all the questions. So I'm working on the ones in the chat. So just, yeah.
I think it's a really great opportunity to get involved, at least in your first year or 2 years. A lot of labs are spread out. Not everyone's, I guess, fortunate to be centered at the neuro where most of the things occur. Some people are at the Douglas, some people are at, at the Glen, at MGH. So I think getting involved in GSAN really helps you meet a lot of people that you might not be able to meet otherwise. So at least in your first couple of years, it's a good way to meet other students, get involved, learn about the community, learn about the resources, and get a chance to go outside of your lab and your institute. So I really would recommend, at least in your first year or two, to, if not join the GSAN, to attend events hosted by GSAN. It's a really great community building experience.
Yeah, and I know there's a couple questions about students being able to because it's interdepartmental, like students being able to connect with each other. And it does depend on which hospital you're located at, but also there are classes that have to be taken by majority of IPN students, and as well as there are many events where IPN students across the different hospitals come together.
Yeah, the size of the IPN, the size of McGill is an important factor. It's kind of a plus and a negative. So the plus is that we're a huge program, which means we have, a lot of offerings for you guys. GSAN is, able to take advantage, I think, of this big community, which is great. We can offer lots of different courses in different departments. But also we're made up of lots of smaller departments. So if you happen to be in physiology, then you'll have physiology department activities as well. So you're kind of getting the best of both worlds. I think that's a good thing about being an IPN.
Excellent. Well, we are pretty much just at the end, so I'm going to stop recording.